Hello, welcome to Conway Video. I wanted to do a video, it's a little bit related to a previous video I did. It's about strengths and the way that people use their strengths in order to solve problems. And this video is actually on the theme of how do you actually discover what your strengths are? Because that could be a much more tricky thing than you think. Because you're trying to think, what am I good at? You don't necessarily know. You might feel that maybe I'm good at this, but you've never done it before. Or maybe you've done something, but you don't quite know how to measure yourself. I mean, was that a good performance? Was that 5 out of 10? Was that 10 out of 10? Was it 1 out of 10? How do I know if no one's there to tell me? I guess the one way I've found useful to think about this is to look at the pressures that you've been put under. What kinds of pressures have you been put under in your life? What kind of demands have been made of you in your life? And then how have you adjusted and adapted in order to meet those demands? And I think that can be a really key way of identifying what you're good at and what your strengths are. And I think practically everyone has had some kind of demand in their life. Even if you were born to a millionaire family and they just lavished you with money, there's always going to be something in your life that is tricky, that's a challenge for you. Maybe even something as simple as exercising every day. That might take discipline, and if that's something you want to do and you find that challenging, maybe that's a pressure that you've been put under and you've had to really adapt in order to overcome that pressure, and you've had to solve problems under that pressure. And so I think that if you can find out what pressures you've been placed under in your life, that can give you a bit of a clue as to what things you're good at, where you excel. And then conversely, if you want to know where your weaknesses are, maybe you can look at things where you haven't really had much pressure. That's already that's not something you've had to worry about very much. And so I think there are all kinds of ways to learn about this. One is to think about relationships you've had in your life, whether that's friendships, whether it's partners, whether it's how you got on with your family, maybe people in your community, all these kinds of relationships. What kinds of relationships have you had, and what were the challenges of those relationships? What were areas in those relationships where you found yourself putting in effort, and where were the areas where you found it was actually pretty easy? Another area could be your work history. What kinds of challenges did you tend to have at work? Were they interpersonal challenges? Were they technical challenges? Were they sort of strategy or problem-solving challenges? And looking at what were those challenges, and what did you have to do in order to meet those challenges? For example, maybe you, I know for myself, being a contractor, one of the pressures I've been under many times is the pressure to get work, and that's involved me being able to look at job advertisements and very quickly pick out the jobs that I'm most likely to get, and then being able to very quickly put together an application and put together evidence that I can perform that job, and all the way through to convincing people to hire me, and then performing the job. So those pressures then give me some clue as to what am I good at, and I can get very specific here, and you can too. You can get very specific about what did I do in that relationship that solved that particular problem? What did I do in this job interview that got me the job? What did I do in this technical challenge that helped me to solve that technical challenge? And that can give you a real clue as to what you're strong at. If you did certain kinds of things consistently well because you had to, because you were under pressure, then you can see them as strengths. And that's where I get to the final point, which is that I think those pressures are very key to what causes us to build strengths. I don't think, for example, you don't get muscles by just sitting there. You get muscular by challenging your body, by pushing your body to use the muscle. And so if you do certain kinds of exercises, then your body adapts over time to make it easier to do those exercises. And so in the same sort of way, if you're under certain kinds of pressures, then your mind and your emotions and everything adapt themselves in order to handle those sorts of pressures and those situations. And then the more you get those similar situations, the more you adapt to them, and then the more strength you build at dealing with them. And eventually, maybe that begins to become enjoyable. In fact, you almost can't imagine not going to the gym, or you almost can't imagine not doing this kind of job, because it just becomes a part of how you live. It's your modus operandi. And then I guess that maybe the last point here is that I've been thinking of then deliberately putting myself under pressures. So deliberately seeking out pressures, not huge ones, just small ones, but small pressures, small challenges that push me a little bit more in the direction that I want to go. So if I want to get really good at solving algorithms, for example, writing a good algorithm to solve a problem, then I'll try to put myself in a situation where it's really necessary to do that. Maybe I'll promise to help someone to solve a problem, and then I have that pressure, right? I have to help them do it. Or maybe I'll apply for a job, and the test of the job is, can you solve this coding challenge? And so then I've got that pressure, of like, oh, I really want to get that job. And then by responding to that pressure and getting good at solving the problem, then I build that capability. And I guess the end goal of all this is that I want to be able to solve these problems and enjoy myself doing it. So I don't want to struggle the whole time. Maybe it'll be a struggle at first, but eventually over time, I know that if I keep exposing myself to that pressure, eventually I'm going to get so good at dealing with it that it actually won't feel like pressure. It'll feel like fun. So yeah, that's my video about pressures and using them to develop your strengths. Thank you.